Okay, part two, how to import, edit your sound in Adobe Animate, and do some simple editing synced up to the sound with motion tweening, etc. And also introduction to some of the other advanced techniques using symbols. Okay, to import your sound, once you've exported from Audition, you can import to Stage or to Library. I'm going to import to Library. I have a sound called fieldrecording.wav, WAV file, that once I've imported to Library, it's going to exist here. You can just see what the waveform looks like so that it actually has sound. If I had exported 32-bit from Audition, it would look like a flat line. It wouldn't play. To bring it into the composition, drag it to the stage. It's going to go onto whatever layer I have selected, so be careful about that. It's not going to play the full audio because I've only established one frame in my animation at this point. So I have a sound file which is about 10 seconds. You want between 5 and 10 seconds for your sound file. Ideally, if you want to do more than 10, more power to you. So it's 24 frames per second. Again, this timeline is in frames. So 24 frames per second times 10 seconds is 240. I'm just going to insert a frame, not a keyframe, but just a hold frame. Keyframe would establish a new event happening. So if I have a keyframe, it's going to be empty. It's going to start the sound over, or there'll be no sound there. So you can see that I've actually established more frames than the amount of the entire recording, so I can kind of click on those and remove the frames to get rid of them. You can actually scrub the sound, which is cool, or when you play through, it'll play through the sound as well. Now, a couple things here. One, when you click on the sound in the layer, any frame where it exists, there's a couple things you want to look at. You want to set it from the sync from event, which is what it defaults to often, to stream. Just make sure it's set at stream. It plays a little more predictably on output, on render. Another thing is if you want to edit your sound file in Animate, you can cut it down at least by clicking on this pencil. If you zoom out, you can get to see the entire waveform. By moving these handlebars, you can actually cut your sound down and preview what you have in here. And then let's say it's really short. You know, that's how much we've cut it down to. So let's just cut down a little ways and say OK. And you'll notice when I scroll over that it's actually cut it down to be a little shorter than it originally was. So when you're done manipulating your audio layer, you want to lock that and work with visual material on separate layers. So one thing I forgot to talk about is I'm going to click off on the stage somewhere, deselect everything, get to my overall document properties. For this assignment, and you can change these things anytime, but you want to do it before you start working with the visuals because that'll change your composition. I want to change my composition to 1920 by 1080. So this is the size of your standard HD video. When you hear somebody refer to 1080p or 1080i, 1080p is progressive, which is the sort of better way. 1080i is interlacing, which we can get into if you want. So, starting to animate, I'm requiring you to do one motion or shape tween, and then the other stuff can be frame by frame, however you want to do it. You're going to be distinguishing and analyzing for types of motion, how you want to animate it, 3 separate sounds. In my recording, I have a siren, I have footsteps, and I have this area over here where the wind is kind of buffeting the microphone. So those are going to be my 3 components. Let me start off by animating the sound, and I want these 3 sounds to be on separate layers. I think you can have the animation of it for a single sound take up multiple layers. If you want multiple moving parts that move differently, that's cool too. So my sound starts off It rises up there. What I would recommend doing is animating the kind of peaks of your sound, those sort of louder, more important points first. Like keyframe the peaks, the dramatic moments of any sound is changeable. In my siren, the kind of high point when it's at the top of the arc, woo, of the pitch, I'll animate that first and then animate the valleys. And with a peaked and valleyed kind of sound like a siren, which goes up and down, it's very easy to translate that into imagery. So I'll just start off with by drawing like a red squiggle form, whatever color I want, and then I'll just have that thing. I'll make this. I'll define it first as a motion tween. Let's make this one a motion tween. And I'll just have it at the highest peak of the sound. It'll be high, and then it'll go low in the valleys. And it's low at the beginning, so I'll just have it bottom out here at the. And then it goes low here. No big deal. And maybe I'll have it arced a little bit. So it'll come back to more or less the same place, but that arced motion. We want to kind of try to convey a sense of naturalism. Like you recommended to do some easing or secondary motion or overlap and follow through to try, even though your objects are abstract, your motions want to be as naturalistic as possible, as if real objects and real sort of natural world forces are at play. When I'm working abstractly, sometimes I sort of halfway cheat. I think about my forces, my things, my moving parts as sort of forces of weather, cosmic forces like planets moving and colliding. These kind of kinetic identities I can think through. I can think about specifically. If I think about wind or blowing leaves or something like that, I can move in specific ways where it's just abstract in the land of ideas. Things become a little mechanical. So we want to bring in naturalistic types of movement here. But here's simple movement, peak and then a valley. Not that interesting, but one thing I can do. One of the ways there's a couple of requirements of using advanced kind of symbol techniques, and one of those is to actually do what we did last week, which is having an animation that is nested within a symbol. I just double-clicked it within my symbol, and maybe I could do some frame-by-frame animation here, but I'll just create a shape tween. And I'm going to want this shape tween to begin and end in the same place, same shape. So I'll just create a different convert to keyframe here in the middle. And one thing which I noticed you can do pretty comfortably, I could kind of play around and move the different points here, but for something drawn with the brush tool, there's so many points that it establishes. It's hard to really transform these things in a meaningful way. You could go into the free transform tool and get into these customizable areas here and do some distortions like that. That could be a good way to deform this thing. But another thing I can do is I can just go into this frame, delete, select everything, delete it, and then maybe let me turn on my onion skinning, and I'll draw another object, another similar object. And I did this before. Let's see if it works. Turn off my. Nah, it didn't really work the way I wanted it to. Sometimes it'll work nicely, but let's try it again. Well, I could do shape hints with this one if I wanted to make it a little better. Okay, that's not great, but I wanted to just distort the edges. So let's actually, I'm going to copy this one and then paste in place. So you can do whatever you want in here in the middle. Let's just grow this guy. Remember shape hints. I'm not going to take the time to do that. But if you wanted to add a shape hint so it knows to turn the 1 point wants to start, 1 point wants to turn into this other point, you could, I'll do that quickly. Shape hint, okay, for shape tweens. Shape, add shape hint. You get a little number here. You can place it on a part of your drawing, and you want that little guy to turn into that little guy. And sometimes the shape hints won't really correct anything until you turn on snap. Snapping, it'll snap onto the shape a little better. And when the shape hint turns from red to a color, it actually really messed things up for me. It was actually going better before. So these are things you can struggle with. I don't really like shape tweens except using them in very minor ways. Okay, so that works more or less. But here I have this nested animation, which actually isn't animating. And why not? The reason is because by default, when you create a symbol, when you create a motion tween and that creates a symbol, it wants to turn it into a movie clip. Movie clips are more powerful types of symbols. They have certain properties, but one of those is when there's nested animation, it won't play in your editing, in your timeline when you're editing. It will play when you export, no problem, but just not in this, at this point. So if you want to see that animation in real time when you're editing, it needs to be a graphic symbol. However, you can always change it back and forth. Some things that you can do with your movie clip, though, you can add things like blending modes, which are like modes you can use in Photoshop. It adds a kind of like different overlay effect so that it blends translucently with what's ever underneath, okay? So I advise you to try out those. If you wanted to add cloud type forms and you wanted layered forms where they kind of blend in a sort of nice like translucent way, you could use that. Another thing you can add is filters. I'm going to go back to frame 1, which are really nice because to get some kind of look to your graphics besides the sort of hard edge graphic look of the vector drawing that we're doing in Flash. And you can only do this with movie clips. For instance, I find blur to be really nice as this sort of salve to give you something which looks more, more atmospheric. If you want a cloud form like that, you can get it. I'm going to zero out the blur here. You can actually animate these effects. Like, say I wanted it to look like it's moving really fast in a vertical direction. I can detach the X and the Y blur, and I can make this look like a motion blur. And then I can have it slow down again so that there's no blur, perceivable blur. So you can actually make the blur, look at that, isn't that nice? Animate the blur, glow, drop shadow, that kind of thing. One more thing I can add is automated easing, which we can talk about now. So any motion tween and shape tweens as well, you can add, when you click on the actual frame in the timeline, you'll see that under the properties, when you click on the object, you don't see it. When you click on the frame in the timeline, you'll see it, automated easing. So you can actually add 100 in the forward direction or in the backward direction. Let's see what happens. In the forward direction, it means that it slows down near the end. You can see how it goes fast and then slows down. In the backward direction, it slows down at the beginning. So slow, now it speeds up as it goes toward the end of the motion. The problem here is that with automated easing, usually when we would ease, let's turn this off. If we wanted it to go, say we wanted to go fast, and like the bouncing ball, we wanted to kind of slow down near the top of the arc, okay? That means that when it gets near the top of the arc, we want it to go less Just move it in the wrong way. Less distance per second or per increment of time. So and then on the way back down, we want to ease it as well. So it goes 1 second, but we wanted to cover less distance in that second since it's easing. And then, oh, so that's a bit of a manual ease, right? And we can do that in an automated way, but I'm going to get rid of this keyframe. Oops. If we want to do that in an automated way, we can only add 1 ease for the entire extent of the motion tween. That means that I can't have it slow down ease, do a positive 100 here, and then do negative 100 here, so that it starts off slow and speeds up to the second part of the arc or the bounce or whatever. If I wanted to divide up, have 2 different types of easing in that one motion, I could actually divide my motion tween by going to split motion. And then I can add 1 type of motion here, positive 100, and then I'm going to divide the motion here too, so it also stops at the end of the bounce. And then on this end of the bounce, I can do negative 100, and this should add more or less the same kind of easing to the arc. See? It went fast to slow, and then slow to fast, like the bouncing ball. The shape of my motion path isn't the bouncy ball shape, but whatever. Okay, so that's how we add naturalistic easing in an automated way. Now, there's another wrinkle to this. If you've accidentally double-clicked on your motion tween in the past, you'll see this kind of monstrosity. This is scary. You don't have to look at it. But if you want to go further, this, what is this called? The motion editor allows you to actually add easing or do kind of minor tweaking to the way things move. And you can kind of break up the different, the position changes, or if you have rotation changes, or even like you can change the way that the blurs kind of are animated over time, or your different kind of symbol filters. If I wanted to actually change the easing of this motion, you can do things like change, you can click on this and change the kind of Bezier curve, and that'll actually change things like where it goes. But if you wanted to just change the easing on this motion, I can click on ease location, and then down here is where the easing is. I could do different like prefabricated, speeds of easing. There are these different things. If you actually wanted to create an eased or slow in and out bounce of a ball, you could just draw the ball, click this easing, and it would actually like automatically bounce your ball for you, which is crazy. But here's I can also do a custom easing. So what you can do with this is, right now it's going at a constant velocity. If I wanted it to start out fast and then go slow, I could actually just click at a point and then pull on my handlebars so that it goes really fast and then slows down. I'm going to change the arc of this. It's going super fast and then it's going to slow down. And I could always like kind of edit these points, add more points or whatever. So yeah, you can see like the automated easing that I have the option to do in this pane here in the panel in the properties panel is fairly limited. But the options that I have within this customizable motion editor allow me to do a lot more nuanced kinds of easing or whatever modifications to the different parts of the animated motion. Blah blah blah. So I think I've covered everything there. Animating within the symbol, the filters and different kinds of animated properties specific to the movie clip symbol, and automated easing. So you're also expected to use some of these effects in this final project as well. Number 1, sync to the sound. Number 2, animate, analyze for types of motion, and implement 3 different separate sounds as visual elements in your stage. And number 3 is use 2 of the animation principles thoughtfully, including arcs, including easing including secondary action or overlap and follow through, and also use I think at least one of the more advanced symbol techniques, which include animating it within the symbol, which include filters for a movie clip, which include automated easing. So that's a wrap. Then you can test it. You can see the animation that's nested within the movie clip symbol is now visible once you export. And that is it.